Hi, my name's Bridgette Hylton. I'm here with Sanam Zaer and Samantha Golding on behalf of a Better Shrewsbury. We're really excited to be interviewing three Shrewsbury High School students today who have put forward a warrant towards town meeting to do a single-use plastic bottle ban here in town. Gentlemen, would you take a minute and just introduce yourselves for us?
Yeah, my name is Prabhav Vadlamudi, and I'm a junior at Shrewsbury.
My name's Aditya Venkateswaran. I'm also a junior at Shrewsbury High School.
My name's Akshaj Aineni, and I'm also a junior at Shrewsbury High School.
Awesome. So, as our viewers may know, we like to start each episode with a random question. So, this is going to be popcorn style. If you feel like you've got a good answer for the question, feel free to jump on in. Sanam, do you have the question prepped up for us for today?
So our question is, what is the last thing that you purchased?
Hmm.
And actually I could go first because today is Mother's Day. So I purchased some tulips for my mother. I bought her a very small bouquet of tulips, and she shows up at my house with a whole tree. So she definitely one-upped me there, but my last purchase was tulips.
You know what's so funny? Today is Mother's Day, and my last purchase was also tulips for my Mother's Day brunch that I hosted at my house today. What color were your tulips?
I had the pink, orange, yellow, purple.
Okay,
Yeah, it
I
was
have
a
like a
really
blush
nice
color.
thing.
Yeah.
I even put it in a glass jar that I had recycled, and then she shows up with a whole tree. So
What do you mean by whole tree? You have to give us a little more than that. Like she brought a maple
it's
tree to your house?
a hibiscus tree with a twisted stem.
Oh,
It's beautiful, but
yeah.
you hand your mom a couple flowers, she gives you a tree. That's bold
Moms.
move.
Right?
Bold moves.
Well, since it is Mother's Day, we do want to wish a happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. All right. Anyone else want to hop in on that? What's the last thing you guys bought?
Yeah, also because it's Mother's Day, I bought my mom flowers as well, but I bought them
Mhm.
roses instead of tulips.
Ooh, that's
Variety
nice.
of color roses, so it's
Yeah.
nice.
You said red?
A red, white, and I think yellow as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so nice.
I bought my
And-
mom an assortment of flowers, red, white, and yellow. I also bought her some chocolate as well. So
Oh, he one-upped us, guys. He got our chocolates too.
Yeah, on that same trend, I went just straight for chocolate. My mom's favorite candy bar, which is dairy milk.
Mhm.
Yeah, I got her that.
That's awesome. It's a good day to be a florist or a chocolatier, I feel like.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's my turn. So the last thing I bought were some pork chops to make for dinner today because I told my mom she could have something special for dinner since it's Mother's Day.
Oh, that's awesome. I might swing by. My 14, 13-year-old just asked me what's for dinner. I'm going to tell him Samantha's cooking.
That dinner's gone.
All right, so thank you guys for indulging us in our random question generation. But we'd love to talk a little bit about the warrant that you guys have before town meeting. Do you guys want to explain exactly what it is?
Yeah, I'll start off by explaining. So, what the ban basically is, it's a single-use plastic water bottle ban throughout town. However, the ban is specifically towards water bottles under 1 liter. So, anything above 1 liter is permissible in town to buy, and you can go to other stores around town as well. So, the reason behind this entire ban is we believe as high school students and the next generation of our town is that we face the consequences of inadequate action, right? So, when we look at today's world, we need to take action on climate change, and we thought plastic bottles and water bottles specifically were having the biggest impact on youth, not only when it came to climate change, but also when it comes to the health impacts. Right, what we found is that microplastics are in everyday usages of water bottle, and we drink almost like millions of microplastics each year. So when we consume these microplastics, we're getting health effects, and research has shown that these health effects can lead to cancer and can lead to cardiovascular diseases, as shown through Harvard and other education sources. But we've also seen like the environmental impacts, right? We've seen plastic all over our town, whether it be at parks or even Lake Quinsigamond. We see a lot of plastic waste from runoffs. But also we see plastic water bottles impacting when it comes to global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. When it comes to recycling plastic bottles and when it comes to even producing a plastic bottle, it takes a lot of carbon emissions. And when you look at the trend of carbon emissions in today's world, you see it's drastically increasing. So when you look at all this evidence and all these impacts, it's the next step for our town, and it's the next step for our younger generation to take and understand what's the situation and how we can truly address it to make our world a better place.
That's very
Yeah,
exciting.
That is really exciting, and it is definitely a problem. I think the big question of the hour is what is the appropriate next step? So what are you hoping this would accomplish? What are the alternatives to the plastic bottles that you're proposing?
So the biggest alternative that we are seeing is obviously using a reusable water bottle, right? I think a majority of high school students nowadays, and it's even a slight trend with some high school students, is using a reusable water bottle, whether it be a hydro flask or even any type of like reusable aluminum water bottles that we see in grocery stores all over our town and even the state. So the biggest alternative for us is reusing water bottle and using the water sources that we have across the state and even the town. But of course, when it comes to like the consumer product specifically, the biggest we saw is aluminum, right? So in today's world of status quo, we are seeing aluminum increase in production, especially when it comes to alternatives such as plastic or such as water bottles. So for example, we saw Aquafina produce aluminum water bottles. We are seeing Nestle produce aluminum water bottles. We're seeing a bunch of these plastic water bottle producing companies switch towards aluminum because that's where the trend is going, right? People are trying to be more sustainable, and we have seen that aluminum is growing. So if this ban does happen, we as a town would most likely go towards those aluminum options and of course the reusable options.
Yeah, I actually noticed that at the airport. I mean, they've had those reusable water stations, and I noticed that my family, instead of buying their $6 or $7 water bottles, we started bringing a reusable water and just filling it at the airport. Are you including any kind of, will there be like a companion initiative to set up more reusable water stations, or are you hoping that that's a reaction of the town to this ban?
Yeah, so obviously the next step of the ban is one, I think Hingham specifically, they created a grant with the local water reusing station that specifically helped them get more water stations. I think it was around 2 water stations. Our hope is that once we ban plastic water bottles, we have that 1.5 year span because this would be enacted in 2027. So with that 1.5 year span, we hope that we can contact grants and even contact local companies and even fundraise in our local initiatives so we can raise the money to get these water refilling stations because I think they're really important. I think we do have a lot in our municipal areas. I think we have one in the town hall. We have a bunch around the high school and a bunch around all the public schools, and we have one or a few in the library as well. So I think we as a municipal are doing very good with reusable stations, but I think it's just like more, right? I think we just need a bit more when it comes to like the parks, like Dean Park. I think we need a good reusable station there.
So, I was thinking about something when we were preparing to host you gentlemen on the show today. And I was thinking about how when we grew up, there were no single-use plastic bottles. We relied on water fountains, or as we call them in Massachusetts, bubblers, to get our water, and it had zero negative impact. I imagine that there are people who are hearing a ban, right? They hear that word and they get feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't want a ban put on me because, like, what are we going to do if we don't have water bottles? But I think the thing that came to mind for me, and maybe this is helpful for some of our viewers and people that are considering this, is that we grew up that way and it was totally fine. I mean, you drank out of a bubbler every day at school, at the park, out in the community, and it was just a totally normal part of our day-to-day experience. And so maybe that's something for you guys to think about as you're trying to convince people in my generation and older to accept this new thing, because change can be hard for people, right?
Yeah.
Is to remember that that's how it used to be and it was totally fine. And that was something that was the first thing that came to mind for me when I read your proposal and I read what you guys were trying to do. I was like, oh, so we're just actually going back to a more environmentally sustainable way of managing water intake in our community, which is the way that we used to do it before. I love the idea of more water fountains being put around town and more water refilling stations so that people can take their water to go with them. I think that's wonderful. I think what I would like to know is what sparked this idea. I mean, you've talked a lot about the statistics and about what is going on in the world and the trends towards aluminum and reusable containers, but there must have been some incident or something you observed locally that sparked this idea for you guys. Can you share a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was obviously seeing our parks and have like the amount of plastic waste that we see in like the forest and all of that. I think AJ, you can talk about this more. You play basketball a lot more than I do, and when you go to parks, you definitely see a lot of plastic waste, don't you?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, not just Dean Park, but in a variety of parks around like certain neighborhoods. where we play basketball, cricket. Like I think our friend group specifically loves to be outside, and just seeing like as you like go to pick up a basketball somewhere in a park, just plastic balls all over the place, nobody like picking up after themselves, just leaving them to be. And I think a lot of it comes down to that appeal of convenience, that the whole reason we have plastic water bottles comes down to that convenience of being able to carry it around. But again, going back to like having those refillable water stations, I think that appeals to people's idea of convenience, and then they can bring those reusable water bottles right back, so that we aren't just throwing away plastic randomly onto the ground, um, especially in these places that like our parks and places like those where like we want to keep them environmentally friendly and like looking beautiful, just like to represent our town in a way that we want it to be.
I have one question, and I think it's a big one in Shrewsbury specifically. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have not great water in Shrewsbury. So a lot of the people who are purchasing water bottles, it's not necessarily because they just enjoy water bottles, it's because they don't feel like their tap water is safe. And I know that we have some work being done at the municipal level to address that, but there are people in town who rely on these plastic water bottles. So I guess, have you thought about that? And if so, how would you respond to that concern?
Yeah, so what we've noticed right now is the biggest concern is the water quality, right? People are in the middle because they either believe that if the water quality isn't fixed, the only alternative for me is to turn to these plastic water bottles. And I think there's two things that we need to like kind of divide, right? So one is the alternatives that are coming into place. So when I think the biggest argument is that people are fearing that when plastic bottles are going to be eliminated, there won't be an alternative that they can buy. But this is not true. We're not eliminating the supply, we're simply replacing it. And we're giving businesses 1.5 years to do so. So when you look at that replacement of the supply, people aren't just looking to buy plastic, they're looking to buy water bottles. So when you switch the plastic out for different types of water bottles, it's more appealing to our town because one, it's more environmentally sustainable, but they're able to get the proper drinking access they need. But I think another aspect of it is that we have introduced a new PFAS facility that's coming up around 2027, if I'm correct. That should be built around that time period. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the hope is by the time we enact this legislation, which will be 2027, we'll also see the increased initiative of our PFAS facility, which should make the water quality cleaner. So yeah, and also the federal government, like the EPA, does technically say that our water quality is drinkable, but of course, like obviously, it doesn't taste great, and there is a lot of concerns with it. So I think that's also a part of it as well.
No, that's great. I'm glad that you're looking at this holistically. And I'm impressed that you knew about the PFAS work that's being done. I will pass this to anyone else who has a question. Samantha, you have one?
Yeah. So I had a question. So far, you guys have been bringing up a lot of great points. One thing that keeps sticking out to me is, I guess the first part is, I understand that these changes will take effect in 2027. However, when it comes to the local businesses, do we, or is there possibly a plan in how this can be enforced if they, for whatever reason are not adhering to this?
Yeah, so one of the parts of our bylaw is that if people or if businesses are not enforcing, there's a fine for it. So every like potential like action that they take against it, it's $100 fine, and it increases to 3 actions and 3 strikes. Then there's a more action towards it. That's our bylaw, and that's like what other towns around the state have also done. But AJ, I know you've talked to businesses around town about the initiative. Do you want to add on to that?
Sure, yeah. So from the businesses I did contact, major restaurants, and not even majors, like local restaurants as well, already don't use plastic. Typically they rely on tap water or like water that they source themselves. So they use plastic, so they had no problem with it. But even like I talked to Market Village Pizza, places like that in the center of town, and even them, like after explaining the environmental benefits of switching to alternatives, they have no problem, especially seeing as they're given this 1.5 year time to adjust. I think that's the biggest part that of our bylaw, that time to adjust is will give them the businesses what they need to make changes and adhere to the law instead of like being rushed into it.
Yeah, and I think something to add on as well is that when you look at other towns that have did this, Lexington, Arlington, Concord, and even Sudbury, they give their towns 6 months to implement this. We're almost tripling that time to 1.5 years. So I think with that time, our businesses can prosper more than we estimate them to because we're giving them a longer period of time compared to these other towns that have had the success of banning the plastic water bottles.
I think
In
something
talking to the
important to I think something else important to acknowledge is that there are currently, and I think one of you may have mentioned this already, alternatives to single-use plastic bottles for single-use drinkable water. I'm thinking of things like Liquid Death. I know Poland Springs is now offering their water in a can in some markets, and seeing those that are very viable options that are on the market. And not just that, because they are in aluminum bottles, most of the aluminum that has been produced over the last 100 years has been recycled and has been reused and will continue to be reused. And so that is a more environmentally friendly, although sourcing aluminum is complicated, so I don't want to overstate this. I come from a place that produces most of the natural resources that are used, bauxite, which is used to produce aluminum. So it's not necessarily a perfect solution, but it is a better alternative to the water bottle crisis that we're having with plastic water bottles. But so there are, I guess the point of that to say is that there are already currently alternatives on the market that will give people the convenience of single use, that will give you, if I forgot my reusable water bottle at home, there are options where you can get a drink of water, an 8 or 16 ounce thing of water, available immediately if you need it, and that vendors in town, restaurants, convenience stores would have access, presumably, to those alternatives, so that people would still have the convenience that they had of having the single use plastic without the detrimental environmental impact and the negative health benefit and negative health impacts that we talked about as well.
Mhm.
I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, thank you.
I have two questions. One is piggybacking off of Bridgette, and one is the one that I was going to say at the same time as Bridgette. So the first one is about the small businesses. In talking to them, were there any concerns from the small businesses in terms of cost or concerns that they had for their clientele or their business? And then the second question, piggybacking off of Bridgette, is that I haven't done much research into this, but I have heard from a few people that producing aluminum is less environmentally friendly than producing the plastic bottles. So I guess if you could speak more to that, how do you reconcile that? Is that accurate? Is that not accurate?
Yeah, AJ, do you first want to talk about the businesses and then
Yeah,
I'll
sure. The
yeah.
businesses I talked to, there was almost no pushback on it because I think before even like asking them, like I didn't just ask directly the question of would you be interested, but like I kind of gave them like a little bit of background and explained what we would be seeing in the future of like the environmentally friendly impacts of it. And so as soon as like they hear that, I think there was almost like tremendous support just like hearing those impacts there because ultimately as much as they are a business, they also the economy kind of thrives on what happens in terms of the environment and how it happens because that what happens to the environment affects the economy like in turn. So seeing as we can improve what happens out in the environment, they had no problem supporting this initiative. But if you want to continue off that, Prabhav.
Yeah, so for the second question on like the aluminum production, so technically yes, aluminum does have like a slightly higher energy usage when it does come to production and like because aluminum does have a higher boiling point, I believe, or burning point, sorry. But even then, the problem lies in the fact that when you recycle them, because at the end of the day, we're talking about aluminum is infinitely recyclable. You can constantly use aluminum, so when you look at the net balance and like the impact weighing of both the plastic water bottles and also the aluminum water bottles, the long-term benefits of using aluminum water bottle for the environment is much better than using plastic because the amount of energy it takes to recycle a plastic bottle is incredibly high. And the fact that you can only recycle it maybe once or twice brings up this major problem to see if like recycling is really an option. And when you look at aluminum and other alternatives, they're infinitely recyclable. And even if you don't recycle an aluminum water bottle, you can use it like a reusable water bottle that you buy from a store. So I think when you look at those like when you look at the environmental benefits and like the long term of it, I think aluminum water bottle is much better, although it could be a bit harmful in the short term.
I think also a common misconception is that when we recycle these plastic bottles, they actually are being recycled. But from the research that we've done, it shows that only a fraction of these plastic actually gets recycled. And even then, like Prabhav said, it's a very like tremendous, tenuous process that often people we don't want to go through. And incineration, other things like that, isn't the answer because that only prolongs like the issue and it doesn't really address like the root cause.
I will say I'm very impressed with you guys. You seem to really know your stuff, and the aluminum versus plastic thing, it's something that I've always cared a lot about, but hearing that you guys are already well versed on it and know how to answer those questions is super impressive to me. I think I want to pivot from that in that regard. I mean, you guys are juniors in high school, you said, right? All three of you
Yeah.
juniors? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm a parent, we're all parents, we're wondering like, how do we get our kids to be this interested in like trying to make the world a better place, because this is something that I think is just so phenomenal that you guys are doing. I certainly wasn't putting warrants before a town meeting when I was in high school. I maybe had a lot of ideas, but didn't actually take the steps that you guys have taken. So what do you think inspired you guys to feel like, hey, this town, we're part of this town and we want to make a difference here and a difference in the world? Like, how did you guys get to be so cool? I don't know.
Yeah, Adi, do you want to talk about it? Because I know you were really passionate about this.
So I think a big thing that we saw was other people banning things like styrofoam in the town of Shrewsbury. So a lot of them were actually students from high school that helped with this ban. And that kind of served as like a role model for what we wanted to do. And especially talking about how plastic has more detrimental effects in the long run and how we are the future of this town. It kind of made it more significant that we have to be the people advocating for this issue, as we are kind of the people that plastic in the long run will most affect. So by seeing other groups and other high schoolers advocating for similar issues to this, we realized that we can actually make an impact on this issue, which kind of kickstarted all this research and advocation for this issue.
I
Yeah,
think also it ultimately comes down to exposure. You can hear like all these statistics about all, like the effects of plastic and all that, but when you're going around town and actually seeing plastic bottles scattered all over the place, it makes you want to do something about it.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Just, I mean, piggybacking off of what Bridget said, I actually wrote a citizens petition a few years ago, and that was a huge process. So I don't know if people listening along have ever done it, but it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of work, a lot of questions, a lot of people pushing back, and you guys are doing a really great job. So regardless of how the vote goes on May 19th, I think you guys are doing a really great job.
thank
You
you.
guys have an upcoming information session too, right? Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
yeah. So tomorrow, Monday, May 12th at 6 p.m., we are having an info session at the library where we'll be talking about our plastic ban, going over our slideshow and discussing the impacts on the town and how this is a long-term issue that the town needs to address.
Okay, so you guys had mentioned that you have your information session on Monday, but I'm not sure if this will air in time to actually get out to people so they can attend. Is there a way that people can reach you via email?
Yeah, they can reach us at plasticbanshrewsbury@gmail.com. That's the best place to reach us.
Okay,
Awesome.
and people can just feel free to reach out with any questions or concerns or
Yep,
wanting to chat on the phone, anything.
anything. Yep.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. It sounds like you guys have really done your homework. Bridget and I are both town meeting members, so we'll definitely be there, maybe with some more questions too, and we're excited to hear your pitch.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
also wanted to add, I'm not a town meeting member, but I really appreciate being able to hear you guys talk about this, because just as Sanam and Bridget said, you guys have done your research very well thought out. So personally, an adult, I would like to also thank you guys for taking the initiative and, doing this as well, because it's well needed.
Thank you.